Oh, Russ of Aquariumax here. And there, we're a little bit better balanced now. I'll play with that. Gotta peel my snake off the chair here. So let's look at what's going on. We got anybody in the chat yet? Just joined in. I brought the corn snake, Mr. Skeletal, to join us for the live stream, and we've got the backdrop of my frog vivarium. So, Molag Bal, hello. I don't think I've ever seen you in a live stream before, so welcome to what is the first time I've seen you in the chat, if I remember correctly. Oh, we're getting quite a few people up. Slav Pepe in the house. Heather Jensen, hello. Gemma K, welcome. Sheena McGee, hey. And Wonder Pet Chronicles, there you are. Good evening to you as well. This guy is so funny. He loves the chair. Loves to play in the chair. I'm going to try to keep him out of the chair. Brian Del Vecchio, hello. How's everybody doing? Mr. Snake, here's another Mr. Snake. Mark Lemon, Clemon, how do you say that? Mark C. Lemon, I'm not sure. But anyway, welcome. Nice to see you here. Crystal's Pets and Plants, hey, hey. Good to see you here as well. So, as you can see, I'm wearing my 10 Reasons I Love Isopod shirt today. How many of you have seen the macro lens tour for the Armadillidium and Porcelio isopods that I did? Let's see. So, Wally, you're not late. I just started like less than 2 minutes ago, so you're good. Andrew Ewald, hello. And Brian says, I had a corn snake just like that when I lived in Oakland 20 plus years ago. Awesome. I'm relatively new to keeping snakes. I had some garter snakes when I was a kid, but other than that, I started with corn snakes just a couple years ago, and now I have 3 red-sided garters as well. Some of you may know that. Backwards Serpentarium, hello. And Wonder Pet Chronicles. Haven't sat down and had a chance to watch, but they look so neat. Cool, yeah, you should check them out when you have a chance. And Dakota 14 Briar, nice to see you here. Cardboard Bear. Oh, Mr. Snake has the chameleon, his gravid again, awesome. And thank you, Wally. I'm enjoying it. I'm still deciding what I should do with the next installment of that video because I have quite a few species left to go, but none of them are like in bigger groups. Like I have quite a few Armadillidium species and even more Porcelio species, but after that, I've got 4 different morphs of Porcelionides pruinosus. I've only got 1 Oniscus ocellus right now. They're sort of one-offs from this point on to a large extent, so maybe I'll just do other isopods or the oddball isopods or something like that. And Lindsay Watkins, wish I could have a corn there illegal or in Georgia since they're native. That is surprising. I guess I'm aware of a lot of states where they have laws against native snakes, but it's just kind of weird that corn snakes would be illegal. But I guess that's the law in the area. And thank you, Backwards Serpentarium. I really love the beauty of corn snakes, and this isn't even a specifically super fancy morph, but I think even just the natural corn snakes are just gorgeous. To me, their colors are amazing, the pattern's amazing, love it. And Fishy Boy, hello. And Heather Jensen saw the macro videos and loves them, great. You just got the Vulgare Gem mix today. Those are super cool. One being a T negative, which is a type of albinism, for those of you who might not know. I like the Vulgare Gem mix. Those are really cool. You get a lot of different colors in there. And Slav Pep, I think some beetle macros would be cool, definitely. And the Velvet Ants would be really interesting up close with all that fuzz. True. I just have to figure out how to slow them down because the Velvet Ants are incredibly fast. But if I can get a way to slow them down enough to stay in front of the lens, the macro lens, I'll do it. The beetles are going to be easier to work with that way because they, you can pick them up and a lot of them are going to feign death anyway, and that's easy enough to do that. Collected isopods from my backyard since the last live stream. They're staying in the substrate, not coming out. I'm not even sure what type they are either. Well, that is pretty normal in a new setup, and some species are more reclusive than others, and it also depends on the numbers you have. So If you collected, say, a dozen isopods and put them in a 6-quart sterilite tub, then that behavior is completely normal until you get more isopods going. If you have, 100 in a 6-quart sterilite tub, they're going to be a lot more outgoing and active for almost any species. But there are some species that are very, very reclusive even then. For example, my Armadillidium klugi Montenegro are always under their cork bark during the day. They come out at night, but during the day they never really venture out of the cork bark unless they're eating, and even then they're reluctant to eat during the day. They tend to like to eat during the night. So you're going to find species like that. But some species are going to be a lot more active. So I might recommend you get some more isopods in there of the same type to see if that helps. But you could look at that, or you could look at getting another species that's going to be more visible. Either one of those will probably help, but one of them takes a lot longer. And doing fern moss macros, yeah. Do a macro tour of my frog vivarium. What do you think? That'd be pretty cool, especially if I can get some close-ups on the frogs, which is going to be hard because they don't really like when I get super close. But if I could do that, that would be awesome. But yeah, catching the velvet ants while they're eating, I have done that on occasion, not with the macro lens, but some of the photography I've done with them is while they're eating. So that's a good tip. I might try that, see if I can get them, around the beetle jelly or something, and maybe I can get the lens. Some of them are really, really shy, like my Desmutilla vestita is the shyest velvet ant I've ever seen, but my Desmutilla klugi is less shy, and I might be able to make it work with that. So welcome Curtis M. and Crystal Pets and Plants. Congrats on the zebra isopod babies. That is so cool. They are definitely a super cool isopod. And Gemma says, I just went to the Philadelphia flower show today and got something that was labeled fairy fern. It's super tiny. I'm going to add it to a vivarium and see if it will spread like a ground cover. Fairy fern is a name that applies to quite a few different plants. I know it is sometimes applied to an aquatic plant that will also grow as a bog plant called Azolla, Azolla, I believe it is. And it is a true fern, from what I recall, that is generally aquatic and grows on the surface of the water, kind of like duckweed. So it might be that you're looking at. It might be something entirely different because common names, common names can be anything. But it sounds like it would be an interesting plant either way. Well, today I contemplated getting out the blue death finning beetle larvae and showing them in the live stream. I didn't have time to do it before the live stream, and logistically I can't do it once I've started. But yeah, Crystal, the clown isopods are one of the most fantastic color-wise. They're a lot shyer than the zebras in general, in my opinion and in my experience, even though I have lots of them. I have a couple hundred of them in a 6-quart sterilite tub, and they're always hiding under the cork bark. But they're so beautiful, it's hard to beat the beauty of those isopods for sure. But as I was saying, the blue death finning beetle larvae are getting big. There are, I think I measured one at, what was it? I think it was 1 inch and 5/8 the other day, something like that. So they're getting there. I want to get them to 2 inches. I could be wrong on the measurement. But anyway, I want to get them to approximately 2 inches before I incubate them. And it's taken a little longer than I was hoping, and I think it's just because it's cooler in the house. But they are growing. I mean, they're obviously doing their thing. And Sheena McGee, I have kept aquatic isopods. The first species of isopod I kept about, well, that would be more than 30 years ago, when I was setting up maybe my second aquarium that I actually took care of. I was around 13 years old or so, and I went and found some Acellus aquaticus, or a species that looks very similar to Acellus aquaticus at any rate. Found some of those in a ditch, brought them home, put them in the tank, and pretty soon there were baby isopods walking around the bottom of the tank. They were breeding in there, so that was fun. The first crustacean I ever bred was an aquatic isopod. That was back in the 80s, so that was kind of fun. And Andrew Ewald, how long does it take for pothos to acclimate from water to soil? Good question. It depends on the humidity that you're keeping it under. It depends on how long it's been in the water and the root development. What I usually try to do, the rule of thumb for me, if I'm taking a plant that has been started in water and I'm moving it to soil, I don't want a lot of root growth, honestly. If you let the roots grow too much underwater, they tend to be adapted more specifically to water growth, and then they will kind of die back when you put them in, and you have to wait for new root growth to replace it. And so rather than doing that, you start with roots that are approximately an inch long, no longer than that, maybe a little shorter even. And then those roots are not too differentiated, and so you will put them in there and then keep the humidity up for that pothos. Don't like soak the soil or anything, but you can tent it if it's a small enough piece. You put a plastic bag over it or something like that, or if it's in a vivarium with limited ventilation so that the humidity is higher in there, you don't necessarily need to do that. But if it's just exposed to the air, that will slow down the the transition period because it'll tend to wilt a little bit. So you put a bag over it for a few days while it's starting to get roots. Also, if you can keep that soil warm, the root heat tends to speed up root growth a lot. I experimented with that when I was a kid back in the 80s. I used an old yogurt maker to make a plant propagation unit. It had a dome over it, and it had a heating element on the bottom, and I put a fluorescent light over it, and I would put plants in there and they would root incredibly fast because of the bottom heat. So I guess the answer is that was probably longer than you were hoping, and it's probably not as specific as you're hoping, but those are all factors that will influence the speed with which pothos will acclimate from water to soil. So Heather Jensen, any ideas what to stock invert-wise with ferns and dark purple calatheas? I'm trying to think of something the color will pop, roughly 1 gallon container. Ferns and dark purple calatheas. And then you're going to have ferns in there, so probably pretty high humidity, huh? Color will pop. That's a good question. I'll have to think about that one. And anybody else have any ideas about that? That would be nice to know. Let's see, Jay's Crazy Obsessions. I missed the start. How's the pleco holding up? Let's see. Yesterday, I saw, maybe this morning, did I see him this morning? I saw him yesterday. He's getting darker, kind of coloring up, which is nice. And he is in a 54 gallon, doing pretty well. It's a new tank that has a lot of algae growth in it because I'm, starting it out and kind of trying to find the balance. I wanted to kind of hit the plants hard on it because I didn't want to have issues with algae, but that means I have to boost up the light, and then I had some plant dieback and so on. But it's starting to work. There's about a quarter of the surface of the tank is covered in dwarf water lettuce right now, so it's kind of fun. But the algae has been kind of crazy, so I introduced some more nerites. I put 2 nerites in when I just started the tank, and now I've got 5 nerites in there plus the pleco in terms of algae crew, and it's starting to do pretty well, I think. And Rooster Gaming, welcome. So Poseidon's Kiss, is there a general rule for enclosure size for number of isopods, like number of individuals per quarter liter? I think it has to do more with species and surface area and things like that to a large extent. So if you show me a container and the species, I would probably be able to give you a better idea about it. But I would say, for example, dwarf whites. I mean, you could keep hundreds in a 32-ounce deli cup, but you wouldn't want to keep hundreds of Porcellio ornatus in a 32-ounce deli cup. There's a lot of difference there, right? So, and the same goes with dairy cows and Porcellio scabra, for example. Scabra is going to need less space because they just don't get as big. Someone was asking me about an Isoviva container the other day, and I said I probably wouldn't keep more than 50 adult dairy cows in an Isoviva enclosure. It's because an Isoviva enclosure is a nice size, but Porcellio laevis get pretty big and active, so I would probably not do as many as I would. I'd probably do easily 300 Porcellionatus pruinosus in the same container, and even more than that for dwarf whites. So just kind of depends on the species more than anything, I guess. Sandy, welcome. And Cardboard Bear, making a stand for your future vivarium. Awesome. And Seamus, I'm glad you got here before it ended as well. M14, have a jar of dirt, had giant isopods in it. Can I close the lid? For temporarily you can, but if you're going to keep them for any length of time in there, I would advise a small amount of ventilation. Giant orange isopods, if they're Porcellio laevis or Porcellio scabra, can get away with a small amount of ventilation, but they do need some. And so yeah, I would say you can close it temporarily for a short time, but don't keep it there over long. So Dakota, if I had a stem cut from a soil-grown pothos plant, would it sprout better in an aquarium or better in a moist soil environment? Either one. I think you could do either if you had a stem that was from a soil-grown plant and you have a moist soil environment, especially with high humidity, you could do that just as easily as you can putting it in an aquarium. But if it's drier, then the aquarium is going to be better. Okay, so Jay's Crazy Obsession. Let me know if he develops any black spots. Been culling those out. Cool. I haven't noticed any yet, so I will keep you posted on that, but he looks pretty solid to me. Okay. Gemma, have you ever thought about keeping snails or kept them? I have some now, and people are actually super interested in them, asking to buy some when they breed. I've kept quite a variety of snails, but most of them have been aquatic because in the United States there are some snails that are pretty widely kept in the hobby elsewhere, but they're illegal here, like the Achatina giant African land snails. Highly illegal here in the US. You can find them in some places. For example, in Hawaii, they are feral, and I used to lived there for 3 years and saw them all the time. They were always outside in the mornings and stuff like that. And I thought they were really cool, but can't keep them here. I have kept, let's see, what's the species? Cornu aspersum, is that the species? I think that's a land snail that you can just find feral. They're not native here, but you can just find them here in irrigated areas. And so I kept those years ago when I was a kid. And let's see. I have kept many aquatic snails, from mystery snails to nerite snails to ram's horn snails, Malaysian trumpet snails, assassin snails, pond snails, some of which I have right now. I've also kept marine snails. So I have kept quite a variety of snails, and I think they're cool. There's also a native, I think this genus is Oreochromis, of desert-adapted snails that lives around here. And I collected some of those when I was a kid and kept some for a while too. They're actually live bearers. They're terrestrial live-bearing snails, which is pretty cool. They don't get as big as some of the others. Their shells are probably about 1 inch in diameter, but they have different color patterns. Most of them are kind of whitish or lightish brown, with some of them have stripes on them and stuff. So they're pretty cool. And Seamus, morning geckos. Logistically, that is hard to do if I haven't started the live stream with them. I did a live stream a month or so ago with them in it, but that's going to be something I basically have to start out the live stream with the morning geckos because of the way I set up the lighting and the microphone and everything. But I will try to do another live stream with the morning geckos soon. So Andrew, I keep regular mealworm, superworm, darkling beetles in a setup like the one you did for the video you posted. Yes, you could, although they're going to need a little bit more moisture. The mealworms maybe not quite as much, but the superworms like it a little bit wetter. Hey, Jordan. Jordan, give me a super chat. $20 super chat. Awesome. Howdy, Russ and Stream. Russ, thank you for always being so helpful. Well, thank you, Jordan. That's certainly helpful to me. I really appreciate the super chat. All the support that everyone gives, whether it's through a super chat, if it's Patreon, whatever it is, really appreciate it. It helps probably more than you know. So really appreciate that, Jordan, and let me know if you have any questions you'd like me to address in the stream. Let's see. And Supreme Gecko. Oh, you saw the betta picture on Instagram. Yeah, are you thinking of keeping them again? Well, that betta sorely tempted me to bring it home, but I was just, thinking, where would I put it? I don't have a place for it right now, and I don't have a place to put a place. And that is why I didn't get it. Being responsible. But if I had had a place, it would have come home with me. So the only thing that I really don't like about keeping bettas is that they both have a short lifespan and they have a long senescence, and meaning that during their lifespan, I've had lots of bettas that lived, well, a number of bettas anyway, that have lived 3.5 years or something like that. But the last year and a half of their life, they were like a geriatric betta, and that's kind of sad. It's sort of demoralizing to watch this betta be old and be kind of uncomfortable, have a diminished quality of life for a year and a half of its, it's like half its life. That it's super active, super healthy for a long time, and then suddenly it just kind of, oh, I'm old, and it stays old for so long for a fairly large proportion of its life. So kind of disheartening, I guess, but I still love them. I might, if I have the chance to keep one again, I probably will, because I think they're great, but I don't really have a place for one right now. And Lindsay Watkins, do you have any New Caledonian geckos? Only one species of New Caledonian gecko at the moment, and that is crested geckos. We have 4 individuals. We have our first one, a female, and her 2 male offspring that she had without mating at all, and then an unrelated male. And they've never been together. We had her since she was a hatchling, and if you've seen the videos on the parthenogenesis that apparently occurred, we have her in a naturalistic vivarium, and we've never tried to collect eggs or anything, but she obviously does lay them. Most of them are infertile, but 2 of them hatched, despite the fact that we got her when she was 1 month old, and she's never been unsupervised, but the male has never mated. So, and Christine Carignan, I'm not sure how to say your last name, but welcome to the channel. I'm glad you're here. And Heather Jensen, do you think bumblebee millipedes could do high humidity? Yes, they can. Bumblebee millipedes could be a great one. They've got great color. That's a really good idea, as long as you can keep the temperature up, 72 or above, within reason, 72 to 80, somewhere in there. They'd probably do great. That's a great idea, and I think the size, a 1 gallon size, would be great for the scale of bumblebee millipedes because they're just not very big, so that would be perfect. Yeah, I like the ISO squad term too, and I think it was Slav Pepe who came up with that one, wasn't it? ISO squad integrate, because I'm sure Adventures Assemble is trademarked. I like that. It's pretty awesome, actually. Oh, hold on. I gotta collect my snake here. What's he doing? He's trying to climb up the dart frog vivarium, so I'm gonna let him go up. Heather Jensen, just got isopods today, and I'm already thinking of buying millipedes. I'll never learn. No, you've learned how it works. That's what you're supposed to do. So thanks for the like spike, everyone. We're getting some pretty good likes going on. Seamus, let's see. How'd you set up some giant canyon isopods? Thanks for getting my name right. Doesn't happen often. Oh, you're welcome. Let's see. Well, I would say giant canyon isopods, they like space because they do get pretty big. And they seem less tricky about ventilation than some other Porcellio species, but they eat a lot. So I would set them up in a deeper container where you can put a large, some deep leaf litter in there, because they're going to finish it off pretty fast. But do ventilate their container a bit and give them, the deep substrate will also help them because they like to burrow a lot. They're really, really shy burrowers. And so I would say those are some tips I would give you on giant canyon isopods. And the more space you can give them, the more likely you are to get larger ones. So, Sandy's greyhound wants to meet the cat and the bird. Yeah, it's funny. I could show you right now if I could work it out. But our cat is literally probably 10 inches from the bird right now and ignoring it, which is nice, because it's one of the best things about this cat is that he ignores the bird. It's really nice. And ivory millipedes crystal are a great species, probably one of my favorites for millipedes. Let's see, Gemma, what are some of your favorite plants for vivariums? Well, I love ferns for vivariums. Rabbit's foot fern is a good one that I like. I like selaginella. I like mosses, of course, and liverworts. As far as some of the flowering plants, I like ficus. I have a few different species of ficus. I have ficus species Panama. Oak leaf fig is another ficus species that I really love because it looks like miniature ivy, miniature English ivy. It's really cool looking. Yeah, those are a few of my favorites. I love bromeliads, Neoregelia bromeliads. You can probably see I got a couple back here. I love those as well. So, and Brian De Vecchio, I tried feeding springtails to my Pseudomugil gertrudii, which is a kind of surface feeding fish, for those of you who don't know, and they couldn't get them from the surface. They're much happier with Artemia. I'm still interested in a Daphnia colony. Interesting, they weren't getting them from the surface, huh? That's very surprising. Okay, well, Daphnia colony we can probably do. I'll have to check on my Daphnia colony to see how it's doing. I looked in there the other day and I saw some, but there's not quite enough to collect yet. You know, I collect a ton and then I have to wait a little while for them to grow back. But I'll check. I'll see how they're doing. So reptiles and fish short. I got Porcelia werneri probably. Any advice? I haven't kept that species, but they're really cool. I would love to keep that species. They're a very flat species. I believe they are Greek in origin. They're pretty cool. Wally, do you have Porcelia werneri? Because if so, he could give us some tips. And Christine says, I've just started 2 isopod cultures. Powder orange as well as 3 cultures of springtails. Creating a couple of bioactive vivariums for dart frogs, did one for a white street frog. Awesome. And powder orange are great species to work with. Powder orange are one of the hardiest isopods out there and very fast breeding, so that's a good option. Oh, and Heather, thank you. That sounds awesome. We need to talk about what you want me to do for my end of the trade a little bit more, I think. But it sounds cool. I'm excited about it. I'm actually want to redo 2 of my crested gecko vivariums because they came with soil in them, or one of them did, or substrate in it, and I wanted to see if it worked, and it didn't work all that well, so I want to redo it. And with some of the plants that you sent me, Heather, that a lot of them are doing really well, like the Chinese evergreen, the Ripsalis is still doing well, the blue pothos that you sent, and a couple of the pothos you sent, I actually have in my goldfish tank, and they're growing pretty well, and they're going to get ready to cut, and I can put at least one of those in there, and maybe I could put the orchid and the fern in there as well, and that would be cool. Let's see. And keeping springtails with your isopods and millipedes is a great idea, Crystal. I would agree. So Gemma said, oh, the duckies. You know, my rubber duckies aren't doing as well as I would hope. They have not bred yet, and I've lost some of the adults. I still have some, and I'm hoping to get them to breed, but they're not breeding yet. But hopefully they will in sometime in the future. So Supreme Gecko doesn't keep them, but he believes they're like P. spatulatus, very dry, lots of ventilation, small moist area. Cool. Well, thank you. Well, that's nice of you, Heather. I appreciate it. I've got a lot of cool plants from you, and I think they're awesome. So I wouldn't mind at all. A couple more, if you're willing to send them, I'd be happy to do that. So, ooh, that sounds cool. Pothos-like plant that is blue and silver, Scindapsus. I can do a little cutting on. That would be cool. Hello, Tavian's Reptiles, World of Reptiles. Welcome. So today, I'm going to be doing a feeding video for Friday because Friday is the first Friday in March, and so I'll be doing a first Friday feeding video. I may actually be filming 2 of them. We'll see what I can get done, but that'll be fun. And pretty soon I've got a video coming out with the releasing the garter snakes into their new vivarium. And I've got an isopod unboxing coming of a type of isopod I hadn't kept before, so pretty excited about that. Inverts PH, hello, and welcome. Looks like our time is almost up. So does anybody have questions? Oh, well, Wally's got a question. Supreme Gecko, dart frog seasonal breeding. It depends. I think there are some species that will just keep breeding all year, as long as the conditions are right, and there are others that seem to be a little bit seasonal. I think my bumblebees are kind of not like strictly seasonal, but they tend to be. They tend to produce more in the spring and summer. But I could probably modify that a little bit just by, mimicking more rainfall. The filling up their little pool constantly and misting them more seems to get them going. And they sing all year round. So I don't think they're as strictly seasonal as some other creatures. And so I guess I would say they're not entirely seasonal, but there may be some influence with photoperiod and temperature and things like that, but probably not as strict as some other creatures. And I do appreciate that, Heather. Heather knows that I like things that are blue and blue plants and other animals too, as far as that goes. But she knows what to look for. She knows what I like in terms of plants, so I appreciate that. Do you have Porcelionides florea? I have some, and I think they're underrated as a cleanup crew. I bet they would be really good in a cleanup crew because they're closely related to one of the best species. Are you going to check out the camera there? That's cool. It's kind of nice to see you looking straight into the camera. I've never kept that species, though, at least not knowingly. Sometimes you get that species in with Porcelionides pruinosus, and I do have a very small colony of Magic Potion, but I don't think they're the Japanese one. I want to try to get that sometime, though. And Dakota. You can collect those as long as there aren't any laws against it in your area, and there probably aren't, to collect common pill bugs in your area. I mean, lots of people do that. I've done it. My night gold strain of Armadillidium vulgare is from wild ones I collected in the canyon near my house. So yeah, they're not native, so you're not going to be depleting native populations if you do that. They're not native to the U.S. I mean, it depends on where you live, but assuming you live in the U.S., they're not native. So, and Lindsay, that is a good point with Porcelionides florea, because powder bloom and orange, I think their downfall when it comes to a cleanup crew is they can't handle as high humidity as some of their isopods. And so that's a great point. Porcelionides florea is probably a really good option for that kind of situation. And okay. And you're right, yeah, as Gemma points out. Gemma has done it, I've done it, lots of people have done it. And Terry Tarantula, welcome. And Ken finds the local vulgare too. And Seamus says, I just wanted to share today I finally hand-fed my wild-caught western fence lizard. Thought that was really cool. That is cool when a wild-caught lizard will eat from your hand. I used to have an anole. I guess the real pronunciation is anole. I always want to say anole, but anole. When I was a kid, I had a wild-caught anole that I could take outside. It was so tame. And I would hold it up to the wall, and it would eat bugs off the wall. Because, you get a sun-warmed wall in the summer, and the bugs will congregate on it. You'll get houseflies and little spiders and stuff like that. And they would just, he would just go for it. And he was calm enough that I could take him outside and not have to worry about it. That's pretty cool. Inverts pH. The only common isopod here in the Philippines is C. morina. Okay. And we have that in Florida, at least here, and maybe some other coastal areas. I'm not entirely sure. But that is a cool species. I don't have it, but it's a cool one. Arizos exotics. Hello, any tips on Armadillidium vulgare punta cana? Might seem to be breeding slowly. Well, I guess just the same as any other Armadillidium vulgare, just make sure they have enough ventilation, because if they don't, they might survive for a while, but they're not going to be breeding and thriving very well. So that might be something to look into doing. Just check your ventilation and see if there is enough. Would be my first tip. And then after that, just it might just take a while. Usually, some colonies of Armadillidium take a while before they really start popping, and then you can't stop them. Like when I first got my Armadillidium maculatum, which are the zebra pillbugs, I got mine in, I want to say July, and they were adults, but they weren't breeding till November. And then all of a sudden they started breeding and went crazy and never stopped. So it might be something like that. Calcanort, welcome. Yeah, and I'm wondering, Heather Jensen, if that tends to happen with some other maculatum. I mean, armadillidium too. Yeah, I kind of agree there. And Terry Tarantula, my giant canyon exploded when I left the top off completely. Yeah, I think they're tolerant of low ventilation, but I think they like some of it. And they do like a dry spot, their giant canyons. Chevy Fish, hello, welcome. Oh, I looked at the time. I've got to 35 minutes, so I better start to close up shop here. But thank you everyone for joining in the live stream. Thank you, Jordan, for the super chat. And a like spike, Heather, would be most welcome. Thank you, Wally, for moderating. And thanks for everyone joining. And please remember to catch my video on Friday.